Welcome to the virtual towers of Binary Arcadia, where the games go on long into the night. So where do I start with my personal gaming history? Let's keep it simple and follow the games. That's where the magic happens. The blank canvas transformed by the artist into tiny packages stuffed full of joy and entertainment. The things we fall in love with, reliving them again and again. So where did it start for me? It's hard to say for sure. My memory isn't the most vivid that far back, but Dizzy on the Commodore 64 is definitely an early memory. That little tumbling egg, a platformer that I remember feeling crushingly difficult at the time, at least to my young and emerging faculties. Later came the Amiga, the model I can't remember, 500 maybe. Those lovely discs, the massive boxes they came in, because in those days more complicated games required quite a few. Constantly swapping them out in a desperate bid to see the next part of the game unfold was excruciating at times, but it became a fond and familiar ritual, much like playing vinyl, I suppose. One standout game was Monkey Island, 11 discs no less, a point-and-click epic with the roguish, emphasis on the ish, Guybrush Threepwood. That was perhaps the first world I fell into. With a friend, with my mum, we played it in tandem. Beating the Swordmaster was the stuff of legend. I remember celebrating my mum's brilliance when she did it. The concept of witty repartee was somewhat lost on me at the time. You had to fight the boss with insults essentially, but what a time I had regardless. And then came the NES and my local video shop, which fed the obsession. Not a lot stands out for me, and weirdly enough, Mario doesn't either. But one slightly obscure title called Kung Fu or something like that does. A 2D side-scroller that was equally satisfying as it was infuriating. Simple but effective. I don't remember having a SNES. I'm not sure we could afford it, but it might be more of a timing thing. But I do remember playing the likes of Super Mario World, A Link to the Past, Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct around friends' houses. The graphics astounded me, and the leaps and bounds they skipped along at began to turn my head. It wasn't long after that I started to show an interest in magazines. Games Master and Computer and Video Games were particular favourites of mine. They really broadened my horizons, and I started to get a feel for the industry at large, awakening my inner journalist with it. I'm sure I had a Game Boy by now. I remember trashing the buttons along with the palm of my hand on a trip to France, all thanks to Track and Field. Playing a game so physically was new and fun, albeit short-lived and a bit painful afterwards. Kid Dracula also stands out for me, a side-scrolling platformer driven along by a boy vampire who could turn into a bat and do other nifty things. This is when things really started to kick into overdrive. I can't remember what came first, our PC or my PlayStation. Let's go with the PC. And straight away I remember Dungeon Keeper, a comically evil RTS which stole many of my hours as I toiled away creating labyrinthine dungeons and lairs for my beautiful minions. Those wonderful sound effects. And the PlayStation? So many games. My friend and I battered Tony Hawk Pro Skater from start to Roswell, New Mexico. The music became the soundtrack to our summer. And we wanted so desperately to become skateboarders after watching that Rodney Mullen video. But wait, there's more games to play. Silent Hill until the early hours, watching my friend fall asleep with a tiny cherubic baby monster attacking our on-screen character. The atmosphere was thick, literally, thanks to the fog which covered up the pop-in and the PlayStation's limitations, but worked still within the confines of the gloomy world. Tenchu Stealth Assassins introduced me to emergent gameplay dynamics, experimenting with different items to overcome your enemies. Plus, I got to be a roof-skipping ninja. Sick, as I probably would have said back then. Then there was Final Fantasy VIII, a sort of meditative experience as I recall, but deeply rewarding if you gave it your time. The mythos and lore were overwhelmingly enticing. One particularly fine Christmas in 1996 was spent glued to my Game Boy. Pokemon Blue rocked my world. I couldn't stop playing. Curled up like a hermit in the back of our lounge, angling my screen for light because the Game Boy wasn't backlit, giving conciliatory nods to my family passing by as I feasted on the sights and sounds of Kanto, enjoying the grind of my 6 favourite beasties. Heaven. Next came the second big bang in my universe, the N64. I didn't get one straight away, but was wooed by the revolution in gaming, which was Super Mario 64. The analog stick, the 3D graphics, my brain was buzzing with excitement. I watched the trailer for days over. Mario surfing that Koopa shell. Wow. Then there was Goldeneye, and I remember the preview in computer and video games. The photorealistic characters, which amounted to pixelated JPEGs plastered across polygonal heads that were barely more than cubes. At the time, it was mind-blowing. And that opening skid through the air duct, surprising the guard taking a dump below. I couldn't believe how brilliantly it aped the film. And this deserves a video all of its own, of course. Luckily, I had a sweetheart of a mum who let me have Goldeneye just before Christmas, on the condition I hoovered the lounge. Talk about speedruns. Ocarina of Time was firmly on my horizon by now. I've been stalking it from afar, thanks to the magazines. A demo pod dropped before Christmas at our local Dixon's, and my dad was kind enough to pay a visit. I could have trampled through Kakiri Forest for hours, and when that fateful Christmas day arrived and I discovered that my mum had slipped it into my stocking as a bit of a gag because I'd not stopped banging on about it for months, my Christmas was set. Everything else was just a blur of tinsel, crackers and Brussels sprouts. My real life faded. My new life became a quest to save the princess and Hyrule against all odds. I didn't mind visits from my sister, just as long as she took my mission seriously. And up to this point, Ocarina of Time was my favourite game ever, unequivocally. Then the millennium struck, and along with it the Dreamcast. Again, I wasn't an early adopter, but my best mate was. Crazy Taxi, Power Stone, Soul Calibur, they all became our regular hangouts. I couldn't believe that Sega had managed to squeeze arcade quality graphics into this tiny white box. I had to get on this bandwagon, and I managed it eventually. Regretfully, the price of entry was the trade of my precious N64, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. The Dreamcast opened my eyes to two significant things, the internet and Shenmue. The internet had its own benefits, especially for a teenage boy, but more than anything, it was online loot grinder PSO, Phantasy Star Online, that made its mark. I remember stealthily plugging the ADSL cable in across our landing and sneaking a couple of hours of playtime on more than a few occasions. My friend and I, and fellow co-host, Rich, couldn't get enough. The sci-fi setting, the loot and level grinding, the online interaction and shared experience. I've often thought about getting a PSO tattoo, it left that much of an impression on me. And then Shenmue appeared in a cascade of cherry blossom. Again, it felt like another giant leap at the time. It was gorgeous graphically. Virtua Fighter meets virtual reality. A real-life simulator / detective drama where you could train to be a martial arts expert. Cool, I thought. Picking up pointless objects and examining them might seem quite daft, but at the time it felt fresh and liberating. I'll skip along the GameCube, not because I didn't enjoy some great games on it, like Mario Sunshine, Zelda Wind Waker, Resident Evil 4, but I think the backdrop of my life at the time took some of the sparkle away from gaming. And that's probably why Shadow of the Colossus on the PS2 had such an impact on me. A pilgrimage of hardship and suffering, in some ways mirroring my own struggles. I got lost in that barren landscape and didn't come up for air until I bested it. It actually ended up featuring in an Adam Sandler film, Reign Over Me, for similar reasons, and I recommend you check it out. For time, I'll skip a few beats, nothing too major, but honourable mention to the Metal Gear Solid series across the PS2 and 3 especially, which undoubtedly has a special place in my heart. A couple I beat without ever being spotted, which the initiated will know is no mean feat. Kojima is a mad genius. And of course, I have to mention GTA, don't I? GTA 3, Vice City and San Andreas being the most memorable. I remember my first true sandbox experience devouring me in GTA 3. The soundtrack, the car physics, the profanity, far too compelling a package to resist. And I also remember a few memorable ambulance and police car missions with my fellow co-host Rich providing sat-nav duties in the background. Although San Andreas holds some particularly excruciating memories for me, as my PlayStation 2 bricked just as I was loading into it. The gaming gods were not on my side that day. When I think of the PlayStation 3, I think of The Last of Us and Bioshock mostly. Uncharted was pretty good too. Bioshock with its gloriously deco world, piercing the dystopian darkness with bullet fire and plasmids. And The Last of Us was another breakthrough gaming experience, taking storytelling to another level. The personal connection with the characters, the emotional core of the game, an absolute masterwork. And that giraffe scene, whoa. Goosebumps. That about brings us up to date. The Wii was fun, but the magic went when it became a license to print crappy games. The Wii U I skipped entirely, sorry Ninty. I'm fresh from playing the heck out of God of War on the PlayStation 4, which was fantastic, and in what must be described as the age of the open world, I can't not mention Red Dead 2. However bittersweet my relationship is with it. And last, but most certainly not least, the crowning glory of my personal archive, I think, Zelda Breath of the Wild. Just about Pip's Ocarina to the post. A sprawling epic which relit a flame for me and in many ways inspired the birth of this channel. And that's a whistle-stop tour of my history with gaming, and I can't wait for more. So I suppose I should try and answer a big question. What do video games mean to me? We'll pose that same question to my co-host Rich in his companion video, and I'm excited to see how we'll compare. Games started as an entertainment, I guess you'd say. Its unique feature being that they were much more hands-on than any other forms. But they took on a life of their own. They became this fantastic digital sandpit, a playground away from the toils of real life, a change of pace and a way to refresh. Escapism in its purest form, I suppose. And today they continue to transcend their heritage. Games are most definitely becoming, and have in many cases already become, great art. Social commentaries, high concepts designed to express problems of the human condition, like books we can see as well as hear, and films we can live and breathe. The future will tell us the rest. Well, thanks for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please give us a like, and if you didn't, a dislike. Feedback's always good. And if you'd like to see more of us, then please subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the little bell for notifications. And I suppose that's another one for the archives. Stamped and completed.